Looking for the latest as Georgia makes the drive towards a national championship? You can find it all at DawgsHQ, a part of the On3.com network. We've got you covered on all things, whether it's recruiting, what's happening on the field, or what Kirby Smart has to say. And yes, we got you covered when it comes to basketball, as well as the baseball diamond. We've got all your information. Get over and check us out today. Check out the Black Friday special, and we look forward to seeing you. Go Dogs. Hey, folks, welcome to another edition of Dog Walk Talk, presented to you by DawgsHQ. As always, I'm your host, Jake Roos, and with me, as always, the illustrious beat writer over at DawgsHQ. That's our man, Palmer Toms. PT, what's good with you, brother?
Doing well. I had someone point out to me the other day that you have a pretty constant intro there. So I was thinking it in my head as you were saying it. So that's got me smiling here. But coming off of a big Georgia win, 56-7 over Charleston Southern. I think that's probably what we expected to see out of the Bulldogs. But it was a great senior day celebration. Kirby Smart said after the game that it was one of the most special ones he's been a part of. I think, having seen three of those in my time at UGA and covering this team, I can agree with that. I think that there's certainly something special about this senior class, something special about the way that these guys have bought in, and something special about the way that the fan base has bought into them as players and as people over their 4 years. I asked Kirby after the game, asked him what it is he thinks that it is so special about this senior class that makes all these fans want to celebrate them in the way that they did. And he just said it's the hardship that they've been through, that the COVID season, that they've been through a lot of tough times, but that they've also, brought a lot of great times to Georgia football. And for, UGA fans' sake, they're hoping that they bring a lot more.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, some really cool moments yesterday, no question. I thought the best moment was Jordan Davis getting the honorary red coat and getting the plaque, getting to conduct the band. Just a really neat moment, man. And it had me thinking, Jordan Davis is got to be up there in terms of most beloved Bulldogs of all time. I mean, that guy is going to. He's never going to have to buy dinner in Athens again. I promise you that. But yeah,
I was having that conversation with somebody in the press box afterwards. Like, who is the last one that maybe even compares to him? The most likable guy from this. And there's been some likable guys. Don't get me wrong. I think that there were a lot of people.
Everybody loved Chubb. Everybody loved Nick Chubb with a great deal of fervor. But Nick was never the personality that Jordan Davis is.
I think what people liked about Chubb was that he overcame the ACL and came back and was a leader and had similar production.
Yeah. Fromm kind of strikes me as a guy, even though that, the opinions are probably a little varied on Fromm. I don't think anybody has anything but a high opinion of Jordan Davis. There's some Georgia fans who probably still hold some ill will over the Justin Fields thing toward Fromm. I get that, but he sort of had that natural gravitational pull, where people were just kind of drawn to him. And I think
he's only in Athens for 3 years.
That's true.
That is another big factor to it.
Yeah, that's also true.
Aaron Murray, maybe?
Who?
Aaron Murray?
Yeah, Aaron's probably up there as well. But again, he suffers. And, I think I'm starting to think that maybe it's just a thing with quarterbacks. There are some people who are just going to hate the quarterback, regardless of who the quarterback is, unless the quarterback wins a national title. And quite frankly, I don't even know if that'd be enough for the guy this year if Stetson were to hold on to the reins to convert some people over. So, Jordan, a special bond between him and the fans, it seems, I think. And really just, him coming back this year, having a chance to test those NFL draft waters, it's just not something you see very commonplace anymore in college football. And he did it. And it was a really neat thing to see. And I'm glad that he kind of got his flowers, as they say, while he was still here, because he certainly deserved that. He certainly deserved that opportunity. And hard for me to believe some of those guys that are walking in senior day. Channing Tindall, man, just a guy feel like I was covering yesterday. Kearis Jackson, man. Remember his commitment ceremony very well. Came down the street, hanging out the top of the car, waving his arms and all that. There was a great big barbecue in his front yard. We had a good time down in Fort Valley that day. But I think that I didn't think about the COVID year, but that probably plays into it. Everybody ready to get back into the stadium. But you mentioned
success that they've had.
Sure.
I mean, 3 SEC East championships, 3 appearances in a New Year's Six bowl game with another one likely, all but secured there. And I mean, I think it's that continued success that 2017 group was very special, and last year's group was special because they were a part of that. But, this group has been, Georgia was back in 2017, but what really needed to happen was the continued success to show that, hey, this isn't just a blip on the radar. Georgia is here to stay, like Kirby said after that national championship loss. And I think that this senior class has been a big part of that because they come in right after that loss and with the, pressure of keeping Georgia at or near the top, and they've done that. That's another thing that stands out to me about this class that might make them so special.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. The maintaining of the standard, as it were. I think that's probably how they'd phrase it. If you look around in the game, it was senior day, but I don't feel like necessarily seniors got all the work. Certainly they didn't get even the bulk of the work, I would say. If you look on defense, that was what I was kind of just perusing was the defensive stats. The leading 6 tacklers, all freshmen. So that's encouraging. That's what you want to see against Charleston Southern, right? Interesting to see, both quarterbacks get out there and get some work yesterday. I had a chance to see both of those guys. It wouldn't be dog walk talk if we didn't talk about quarterbacks a little bit. So anything you saw out of those guys, I mean, look, the pressure was not on them. It wasn't like a situation where either guy had to go out there and win the game. Stetson throws the interception early in the game. That created some hand wringing if you're following on social media. But overall, anything you can, I mean, do you feel like there's even anything we can really take away from the quarterback play in this one?
Not really. I mean, like you said, the early interception, had fans a little bit worried. I don't think that Georgia looked as sharp early on as some might have hoped, and I think that probably comes with a noon kickoff against an opponent that you're supposed to beat by 50 plus. And if that was a mission, Georgia didn't do it, went in by 49. But albeit I think that there's not a ton you can learn about the quarterbacks facing against, going off against Charleston Southern. I think that you probably learned more about or at least had the opportunity to learn more about some of these backup guys, the backup quarterbacks, in Carson Beck and Brock Vandegrift. Brock throws one pass, which, I had meant to bring it up. I can't remember if I did or not, but would have set the line at 1.5 Vandegrift passes there, which felt like a pretty good line. But I think that with him not getting an opportunity to throw the ball, it's a tradition unlike any other. With the Georgia freshman quarterback, is hand the ball off. Just ask Justin Fields.
Yeah,
and I think that you can learn some about Carson Beck. I don't think that he looked great. I think that there's still a lot of questions there, and if the Georgia quarterback room after this offseason looked like it was Carson Beck and Brock Vandegrift, which I think a lot of people expected, after this season, coming into the year, I think you thought JT is going to, be the quarterback. He'll go pro. Stetson is just there because he's, still got eligibility, and that you're going to look to Brock Vandegrift, and you're going to look to Carson Beck, and as well as Gunnar Stockton. I think that you were, in all likelihood, people thought that they were going to be looking at those 3 guys. Now, obviously, things are a little bit different, but if that was the case, I think that there would be a really strong competition between those 3 guys this spring. to battle it out for the starting job. I think that you're probably going to see those three guys battling it out for the backup job unless, somebody decides to leave before the spring based on the decisions of JT Daniels and Stetson Bennett. But I think that there was a lot that you could learn about those backups and less as much about the starters, because like we've known, we know what Stetson Bennett and JT Daniels can bring to the table. I think it's interesting. We really haven't seen the JT that we saw early in the season, the JT that fans got to know last year with them airing it out. And the South Carolina game comes to mind, the Vanderbilt game. We haven't seen that since he came back from injury. And whether that's because he hasn't been the starter and he hasn't been asked to do that as much as he's been asked to do, short check down type stuff, or whether that's, indicative of what he's capable of post injury, I don't know. But it certainly is interesting. And it'll be interesting to see, in all likelihood, he'll probably get in the game next week against Georgia Tech and see what things look like there. I do think that it was good for him to work with these starters on offense rather than working with, the second string offensive line and the receivers that aren't really in the rotation much. I think that's good. And if you're in the boat of you want JT Daniels playing, that's a positive sign that he's getting those reps with the ones, because quite frankly, in practice, what Kirby had told us is that he's getting more of the twos reps than he is ones.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Now, I want to throw this one at you because I feel like we've taken quarterback about as far as we could through the Charleston Southern game. But while there may not have been too much that we could garner from those performances, is there anybody who stood out to you necessarily from any other perspective? I mean, any of these young guys who came in, and again, keeping in mind the opponent is who they are, and, the talent differential is what it is. Were there any of those guys who came in and kind of caught your eye with their performance yesterday outside of the quarterback room? And I'll open this to offense and defense, either one.
I'll take it to defense because, like you said, the top 6 leading tacklers on that side of the ball were true freshmen. I think Jamon Dumas-Johnson is going to be a middle linebacker, inside linebacker that Georgia can count on as early as next year. I think that and I mentioned it earlier in the week in the players to watch, I mentioned him there because you look at the turnover that you're likely going to see in that room with Nakobe Dean likely headed to the NFL, with Channing Tindall and Quay Walker likely headed to the NFL, or at least facing decisions on whether they want to come back for that extra year of eligibility or not. I think Tindall is all but gone. Walker maybe, has a little bit more to think about and whether he wants to come back and be, the guy. But I think that if he goes, he would easily get drafted. So I think that you're looking at an inside linebacker room that's not going to be super experienced next year, which is, different than what Georgia has seen in the last couple of years, because you've seen guys like Tindall and Walker be a part of it for several years now, just not the guy, the main fixture. Until these last 2 years, they have been a big part of that, that core rotation. Nakobe Dean was in the same boat where he was a part of it as a freshman, but wasn't, necessarily the guy. And he worked his way into that role as a sophomore and junior now. It's going to be interesting because I think Jamon Dumas-Johnson is certainly a guy. Smile Munden too. Another guy that was up there near the top of those leading tacklers. Those two really stand out to me. I think the other person that would stand out to me was Xavier Sori, which I think was great for Georgia fans to see that. Felt
odd to me that, based on how he played yesterday, felt odd that we haven't seen him more this season.
I completely agree. And you've got to wonder if maybe there's been an injury or something that we didn't know about, that Kirby, because he wasn't asked about it, wasn't going to tell about it. I think that that's certainly possible. And that, I think that, but it is interesting though, because of what you've seen from the outside linebackers, and what you're seeing now with that depth being really tested. Robert Beal coming in, had a nice sack. I think that It wouldn't. Part of me would be very surprised if Sorey plays a big part in this stretch run, because he's only played in 2 games up until yesterday. So he's now at 3. He's got 1 more that he can play in without burning a red shirt. So part of me thinks that he's gonna red shirt, but at the same time, like you said, based on the play that we saw yesterday, wouldn't surprise me. If Georgia was in need of, there's a reason he travels. If Georgia was in need of an outside linebacker, I think that they would put him in there. I think that they feel confident in what Chaz Chambliss can do on special teams, but I think if they needed a true outside linebacker, they'd probably go to Sorey over Chambliss. Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just feels that way, especially with how hard they recruited Sorey, the talent that he was coming out of high school. That feels like that could be going on behind the scenes.
I can see that. That makes sense to me. Overall, like I said, look, it's Charleston Southern, right? I mean, you could have probably predicted this one before the season started to some degree. And good sign that it all played out like it should. Now you turn your attention to Georgia Tech, and the Yellow Jackets coming off a drubbing by the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame, 55-0. We'll get more into that this week later on in the next edition of Dog Walk Talk. But let's call it what it is. Georgia sitting number 1. Alabama looked a little bit more susceptible again over the weekend. It felt like Arkansas had them on the ropes there for a minute. Oregon falls. Ohio State seems like a team that's really on fire right now. So it's not like it's easy sledding out there necessarily, but Georgia, this is 7 straight weeks of number 1. They've been number 1 every week in the college football playoff poll. They're expected to, here's a fun one for you. What do you think the spread will open up for against Georgia Tech? I'm gonna say
42.5.
Oof, man, they may not even list it if it's 42.5. That's huge. Yeah, I think that you're right. I think you're definitely over. You're definitely over 35. You're definitely in those high 30s, low 40s range.
What was the spread against Vanderbilt?
That one was like 30 something, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, I don't think it made it quite to 40. I think the Missouri spread's been the largest one of this
season. 35 was the spread for Vanderbilt.
Okay, so against Missouri, it was like 37 or 38.5, wasn't it?
It opened at 39.5.
There you go. Okay, so that's good. I think that's what's actually the interest. Will they top the largest spread of the season against the in-state rival Yellow Jackets? You got to think perhaps maybe the home field advantage, if you want to call it that, in Atlanta will help maybe them some with the spread, but it's going to be big. And there's no question about that. So, Georgia, smooth sledding till SEC championship. Alabama locked in now. It's a done deal. They will face the Crimson Tide.
You can go ahead and count on that ticket price skyrocketing now.
Yeah. I guess now that that's locked in, Palmer, just your quick thoughts on that. This is what we expect. I think that's what everybody expected was going to happen. Now we know it's what's going to happen. How do you feel Georgia stacks up with this Alabama team?
It's going to be interesting. I haven't gotten to see a ton of Alabama this season just because they've played a lot of the same times or, around the same time as Georgia. I think the game I probably got to watch the most, the couple of games that I got to watch the most of have been some of those early kickoffs for Georgia and late kickoffs for Alabama. The Tennessee game comes to mind there. I guess Georgia was on a bye that weekend, but so I got to see a decent bit of that. I saw the tail end of last night, saw them play Texas A&M, saw the tail end of that one. It's an interesting matchup because I think that as much as it is on the field, this is a mental battle for Georgia. And I think it's just something that they've got to get over at some point. And if it's not going to be this year, you got to wonder when is going to be the year. Because this is as talented as Georgia has been. This is maybe as susceptible as Alabama has been. And it's not an upset. I mean, I saw the initial spread on that one that was put out. I guess at that time it was still a hypothetical spread, but it was put out at like 3.5 as a Georgia 3.5, which would be, I think it's the second time since 2010 that Alabama has been an underdog. You know, the other time?
Probably against Georgia.
It was against Georgia.
Yeah.
Was the year?
Which one?
Was it 2015 against?
Oh God, I hope not, because they screwed the pooch if that was the case.
I think
that 2015 game was a massacre, dude.
I think it was.
Wow.
I could be wrong, but I think
no. I think that may have been, oh gosh, that may have been 08. I believe that was Georgia, Alabama 08. I believe that was Georgia's follow-up blackout game. If I'm not mistaken, let me see. Yeah, that was the 20. Yes. So that's the game. That's the game that I look back on as really a big springboard for Alabama that year. But yeah, 08. That was 41. Nope. No, is that not the one?
2015, they were a 1-point underdog at Georgia.
Oh my God, man! The odds makers were. The odds makers did not do their homework for that one because it was easy for anyone.
Of being favored in 72 straight games that dated from the 2009 SEC title game against Tim Tebow's Florida up until that 2015 game. So,
wow.
Yeah, which says a lot more about Alabama than it does any of the opponents that they've played, because they've played some really great teams. I mean, that the fact that that they weren't an underdog against LSU in 2019 says a lot about what Alabama was capable of. I mean, same goes for the 2018 national championship game that they lost. Says a lot about Alabama to be a favorite as the 4 seed going against a higher rated Georgia team that had won the SEC championship in 2017. To be a favorite in both those SEC or in the SEC championship game against them in 2018 as well. Don't get too excited here because you're going to give away our whole podcast for the lead up to the SEC championship. There will be plenty there. That'll be plenty. Sure, we'll do a crossover show with BCS. Lot to talk about there. One thing we did forget to mention here with this Charleston Southern game, and it also relates to the Alabama game. In these Georgia Tech as well. Couple Georgia receivers coming back. Dominic Lock making his appearance on the field again for the first time since 2019 SEC championship game against LSU. Tore his ACL in that game, re-injured his knee prior to the 2020 season. Has been cleared of the knee, but has been battling hamstring issues that came from trying to in the rehab process of the knee. He's been battling that, was back on the field, had 2 catches for, I believe it was for 11 yards. Yep. Had a catch for 10 yards, which was, really felt really good to see Dom back on the field because, you've got to feel for a kid that has had that success early in his career, looked like the stars were aligning for him to be, maybe 3 and out at Georgia, and that he was going to be a big part of what Georgia's offense was under, Todd Monken in 2020, getting him back. And so, got to feel for the kid in the way that he has battled injuries. But like I said, great to see him back on the field. Also had 2 punt returns, as well as George Pickens. George Pickens was back in uniform, first time that he has dressed out since his ACL injury. Did not play, went through warmups. I think that the way I see it is that, and we asked Kirby about it after the game. He said that George is still not cleared. That George has, a bunch of tests that he does that he's got to pass in order to be fully cleared. And at that point, they're hopeful that they can get him back. But until he passes those tests, that there's not much that they can do about it. But to me, which begs the question, why dress him if he's not going to play? Well, because you can go out there and you can have him warm up and get his, essentially a practice in ahead of the game, running routes, at full speed or as 100% as he can be, working with those quarterbacks and such. It also going as it relates to the Alabama game. Let's say George doesn't play before that game. Just the fact that he's been dressed out means that Alabama has to put some time and effort into George Pickens.
Yes,
he demands the respect of a defensive backfield, and so you've got to. Maybe it was just Kirby, setting up a decoy there. He can get in the game and be a decoy even if he's not 100%. Because after that game, you've essentially got 4 weeks to get him up to speed, to playing speed, to throw him out there in the playoff game, should Georgia be in that. But to me, what would you say about that, Jake? Because to me, I think that whether or not he plays, I think that it certainly sets up a scenario where Alabama's having to dedicate some time to him, which means less time to the other guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree. I think that's been Kirby's master plan all along. You march him out there, and whether or not he's good to go or whether or not he's going to make an impact doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, that when the kid is on the field, you're going to have to account for him. And maybe he won't see the field, but the second you think that, they're going to march him out there. They're going to figure out a way to do it. I mean, I really think that that's the case. And you can't be – Alabama's not going to be caught unaware for anybody. That's just not who they are. That's not how they're coached. So it's not a situation. They are going to plan for George Pickens. They are going to spend some time game planning for George Pickens. They have to do it. Kirby is from the Saban school. This is a Saban move, and kudos to him for doing it. I think, but overall, it feels like. I fingers crossed, right, that he gets a chance to get back. I think everybody would love to see that. In this season, you probably couldn't imagine having this season without George Pickens, and yet somehow you found yourself in that position. But overall, I think it's I think at this point it's just something else for everybody to have to plan for, as if there weren't already enough between this defense and what the offense has been doing as well. So.
Think he plays against Georgia Tech?
I don't know. I hope I will say this. If he does, I hope they got that padding a little thicker on the walls in case he throws anybody through it again. So,
so let's say he doesn't play against Georgia Tech.
I think he's bound to play. I think he's going to play once more before he leaves Georgia uniform. I do think he's on that pace. I think it seems like it's all been leading up to that.
I mean, let's say he doesn't play against Tech. Like we said, you can throw him out there, and he demands that respect just because of what he's done when he has been on the field.
He's going to draw coverage. I mean, you can't leave
against Alabama.
Yeah, exactly. You can't leave him uncovered. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. So,
do you think he plays against Alabama?
Yeah, I do. Like I said, I think he plays once. I think he plays at least one more time before this season is over. I think that he gets an opportunity to get back out there and do it one more time.
So you don't think that's just the playoff? I guess what I'm asking here is, do you think, let's say he doesn't play against Georgia Tech and they're saving him for the SEC championship game. Yeah. Do you think they are saving him for the SEC championship, or do you think that they're saving him for the playoffs?
I'm going to lean toward the SEC championship. I feel like Georgia's in the playoff probably regardless of what happens, but I think Kirby is wise enough to understand that there is no guarantees with such a thing like that. And so if you're going to play him, you got to play him in the SEC championship, because quite frankly, like I said, all signs point that way. That's just not the way it always works out. Right. So, I think you do get a dose of George Pickens before the playoff, as it were, or the bowl game, whatever happens with that situation.
Well, I can tell you, Georgia's in a bowl game. He's not playing.
Yeah, no. I agree with that completely. He's gonna go somewhere and sip Mai Tais and work on his 40 time while he preps for the NFL Combine. But we'll have a full preview of Georgia Tech coming up later this week. Don't make sure you don't miss that, and make sure you get in and check it out. If you haven't, get over to DawgsHQ, check everything out over there on the site. We would appreciate that as well. Big week coming up, even though it's Thanksgiving. We got all the regular pieces coming. If assuming we can track down some film on Georgia Charleston Southern, if that exists somewhere on the internet, we should have our film review with John Rick. Be fun to see what he can take away from this one. I'm interested to see what the coach's eyes tell us. But I think that's it for me this week. Palm, you got anything else, buddy?
Quick thoughts on Dan Mullen getting canned? And I guess, since we're a Georgia podcast, how does it relate to Georgia on the recruiting front?
Hard not to do it. I think that they were in a situation they had to. Makes sense to me that you would do it after Missouri. Things were not moving in the right direction. The recruiting's falling apart. Right now, I think last I checked, and they had about 12 commits. Whoever gets in there has a absolute Atlassian task, pushing the boulder up the hill only for it to fall back down on them again when it comes to this recruiting cycle, because it's going to be tough, man. When you're talking about Georgia recruiting, if I'm Georgia, I'm taking a look at some of those receivers. Georgia's receiving, I think Georgia has not done as well in the receiver room this year when you're talking about recruiting. So they've got a couple guys over there that I'd take a look at. Jaden Gibson is a guy. Jamarian Burt was a guy. But really the real gems to me are what's on the roster. And that's, I tweeted out the vultures kind of going over the roster. And I mean, listen, if you can get Javon Dexter to answer a phone call from you, get that man in somewhere now, tomorrow. Do it. The kid's a game changer. He's excellent. Somebody on Twitter said, those players got him fired. Yes, to a degree, but that doesn't mean there's not talent at Florida. There are some pieces at Florida that can play anywhere in the country. So that to me is the interesting aspect. Georgia and everybody else will go pick over the bones of both the current roster and the recruiting class. But, wide gap in the SEC East right now. Everybody, it feels like 2-3 years away. Kentucky probably the closest. Tennessee maybe right behind that. Shout out to Shane Beamer for getting them Gamecocks bowl eligible as well. That was a big win for those guys. But just insane turnover in the SEC. And Dan Mullen, the latest victim. I don't know. It's kind of weird that we won't have Dan Mullen to kick around and make Randy Quaid references at, but certainly we'll adjust. And I really look forward to seeing who Florida's going to get this hire, because this is a big hire for them. You're going to put yourself in a Tennessee situation if you screw this one up, and you're going to be back even further than you are. And so they can't really afford to do that. Any early clubhouse leaders in your opinion, Paul?
No, it's going to be really interesting to see some of the names that they, pursue, and I don't know that it relates to Georgia's coaching staff, but, Dan Mullen is certainly, Dan Lanning is certainly, a head coaching candidate after this season. I don't know that he would be, a shoe-in for Florida. I think that you're probably looking at somebody that has more coaching experience. But
what about Will Muschamp? He's a guy who has a lot of coaching experience.
I know the Gainesville area pretty well. but I think that I think as the dominoes fall, that's where the impact comes for Georgia. in terms of their coaching staff. I was, making a joke to someone earlier that their last 4 coaching hires have all been last name starts with an M: Meyer, Muschamp, McElwain, and Mullen. Todd Monken.
Oh, interesting. I'm not going to go that far just yet.
I far either, but just certainly going to be interesting to see because as much as this is not a Florida podcast, this is a Georgia podcast. Who Florida hires has a direct impact on how Georgia football will look over the next couple of years because you're going to see them every season down in Jacksonville. You're going to be going up against whoever that is on the recruiting trail. It's certainly interesting because it has an impact and for Georgia. And a lot of the times the East is won by, the East is decided by that result down in Jacksonville a lot of times. I mean, it's been the last, couple of years, the winner of that game has won that game. The winner of that game has won the division. I think the last time that it wasn't Georgia or Florida that won it was who won it in 2016? I think Florida did.
I believe that's correct. I'll tell you this: the 2 names that I think should scare Georgia fans the most, Lane Kiffin, I think would do an incredible job there. I think that there are a lot of playmakers in the state of Florida that would align well with his system. And Dave Aranda is a guy who I just love personally. I think it's just a hell of a coach and a guy that anybody would do well to hire.
2014 was the last time that the SEC East champion was not Georgia or Florida.
Was it Missouri?
It was Missouri.
Yeah. I those are the 2 guys that stand out to me. I did propose this trade to somebody the other day, 3-way swap. Florida gets James Franklin. Iowa State gets Dan Mullen. Penn State gets Matt Campbell. I think that's a good fit for all parties.
It's not a terrible fit.
I agree.
James Franklin back into the SEC.
I think he's got some frustration with the admin at Penn State. I don't think that maybe necessarily he feels he's getting, everything Ohio State's getting in terms of facilities and in terms of support and those kind of things. And I think that, that's such fertile recruiting ground. I think it would depend on. It's going to depend on what Florida wants to do. Do they want to move in the direction of a young, fresh face, a proven, tested guy? Do you take a chance on somebody? I just don't know. I don't have a good feel on it. But I'll tell you this, to call Florida anything less than one of the premier jobs in the country is to underestimate what they have available.
Well, and there's several premier jobs open. I mean,
yes.
USC, LSU, Florida. Yep. I mean, these are programs that USC was in the Rose Bowl and the Cotton Bowl in back-to-back seasons in 2016 and 2017. In LSU obviously won the national championship and was in a New Year's Six Bowl the year before that. Florida has been in New Year's Six Bowls the last 3 years, maybe 2 or 3 years. Certainly last year and the year before, and so I think it just goes to show the world of college football that we're looking at now, where you don't have a ton of time and recruiting is paramount in being able to have some early success. You've got to be able to recruit well in order to play well. Kirby has said it. The players win games. Coaches don't win games. You've got to have good players. A good coach is nothing without good players.
Yep. No question about it. So definitely one we'll keep an eye on. And like you said, going to be interesting to see how that affects recruiting for sure. Moving forward. All right, we're going to wrap this one up, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of Dog Walk Talk. Make sure to get over and check us out at DawgsHQ, and we will see you later on.